I feel like I'm at some comedy club or something here tonight. Did you hear the one? No, I'm just kidding. My name is Shari. I am in recovery. I choose recovery. I'm so glad I have a choice in this today. I choose recovery from drug addiction, alcoholism, and bulimia, and I'm working on a whole bunch of other stuff. Hello! All right, so here's the deal. And some of my friends already know this, but I love it if you talk back to me. Not talk back to me smarty pants style, but just talk back to me. Like if you hear something that you agree with, say amen, or oh yeah, or stuff like that. But I feel like this is more of a conversation between friends. Because, so I had this big epiphany. You know that we have common phrases in recovery. One is, it works if, all right, and meeting makers. Yeah, but what if you've just gotten to the point where you've made meetings and you've worked it and you just don't think you need to do it anymore? Right? Yeah, so the CR leadership asked me to talk about the importance of meetings tonight. What do we always say? Meetings! Okay, but I'm here tonight to let you off the hook, all right? I'm going to give you reasons that you don't have to go to meetings anymore. Are you ready to hear them? You're off the hook, man. All right, the top reasons to stop going to meetings is, the first one is life gets good again. All right, the heat's off, the pain has subsided, the spouse lets you back in the house, your family's off your back, your boss is giving you another shot. Thank God. And, it's all good, and so it shouldn't really be any problem to keep my momentum going. Things are going so good, I'll probably never, ever do anything to mess that up again. And because I have all this great stuff going on, my schedule has really, really filled up, and which really brings me to the next reason not to go to meetings anymore, and that's I am too busy. I am so busy. Between work and family and sports and social life and hobbies and me time, I can't fit another thing into my schedule. Do you know how it is? So much going on. Now, I realize I wouldn't have any of these things going on if it wasn't for what I learned at meetings, but seriously, something has to go. And I have to make a decision about the best use of my time. And meetings improved my quality of life so that I can now focus on other things. Are you convinced? Not yet. All right, well, I'm going to keep going. Because, I'm not as bad as some of the other people around here. Just saying. I spent a lot of times in meeting, and I have compared my story with others. And I think compared to some people, I'm doing pretty good. And besides, I've worked the steps, all right? You know those workbooks, those CR workbooks? I flipped through them. I did them kind of like I didn't have a sponsor or anything like that, and I didn't actually write in the books, but I did them in my head. And so what else is there? I've done the program. I went to the meetings. I worked the steps. So how am I doing? Haven't I convinced you that I don't need to go to meetings anymore? Those all sounded pretty convincing to me at one point in time in my sobriety. I've used all of those excuses, all those rationalizations not to go to meetings. And they all sound pretty bad, right? Truth is, they're all thoughts I've struggled with in my journey in recovery. And I have more, which is pathetic, and they are increasingly stupid. But this one takes the cake, I'm going to tell you. Because you know what? For years, I struggled with the concept of a higher power. And after about 2 years of white-knuckle sobriety, I finally had some kind of a spiritual awakening. I turned my will over and my life over to the care of God. It was all good. And so, after about 6 months of walking with God, I figured I knew pretty much everything I was going to ever learn from Him and that I could move on. I tell you this, how amazing it is to think that I would think that the creator of the universe, the one who created the big blue sky and a baby's eyelash, the one who created the countless planets and puppy breath, had run out of things to say to me. He was just tapped out. That was me at 2 years of sobriety. It's embarrassing to admit, but that was true. Now I'm going to stop this nonsense now, and I'm going to share some of the reasons after 44 years in recovery that I keep coming back to meetings. Yeah. One day at a time, right? So I hope you take these to heart, because I really, really do. So top reasons to keep going to 12-step meetings. The first one is that meetings overcome the loneliness and isolation that comes with addictions and afflictions and compulsive behavior. Alcoholism, addiction, codependency, all that stuff, they all breed loneliness and isolation. We have to hide. We can't let anybody know what's really going on. We can't let anyone know what we're doing. Oh, no. And once isolated and alone, if we stop going to meetings, there is a pretty good chance that the disease or our stinking thinking are going to convince you and I that we're well, or that we never had a problem in the first place. And without others speaking recovery into our lives, we might just convince ourselves that we could just have a little bit, maybe just a sip or two, or have a different mind-altering chemical than the one that got me into recovery. Or I could try to talk myself into that. I mean, that's really dangerous. Now, I have never done heroin before, so I've never had a problem with heroin. It was pot and alcohol that brought me to the rooms, and I just want to ask you, do you think it would be safe for me to try? I've never had a problem with it before. No. I won't. But I hear this a lot, and it scares me for people to think that there's some workaround. That because I didn't have a problem with cocaine because I never did it, and I have this opportunity. Man, that is like Russian roulette. Guys, our thinking can be self-sabotaging, so self-sabotaging. And left to my own thinking, I can get into really serious trouble. So how about reading this scripture on the screen with me? There is a way which seems right to a man or woman, but in the end, it's the way to death. See, we think we know what's best for us, but our best thinking can be way off the mark. Have you ever had an experience like that where your thinking just was out in, is this left field to you or right? Is this your left? Okay, or this way? It's way out there is what I'm getting at. Okay. And then you just kind of like wake up and go, oh my goodness, what was I thinking? Right? There's a way that seems right to us sometimes, and that way can lead to death. There are no loopholes in this program. And when we look for them, it could be with disastrous results. Are you, like me, sick of burying our friends? Right? Looking for loopholes will take us down the wrong road. Now, I love the way the Passion Translation shares this same scripture. Let's read this one. I love it. You can rationalize it all you want and justify the path of error you've chosen, but you'll find out in the end that you took the road to destruction. Yeah. Not going to meetings is the road to death. It's the road to destruction. And I want to be on the road to recovery. I want to be on the road to abundant life and peace and joy and all that good stuff. I will never find what I'm looking for unless I'm hanging out with you people. It's not going to happen. I need to be immersed in the recovery community. Now, you've heard it said or you've seen it on nature shows, and it's horrible when you see the gazelle that gets devoured because it was on the outside of the pack or it was far away and it gets devoured. And because the ones in the middle of the herd, they're the safe ones. And you and I need to be at meetings in the middle of it all, fully participating, not on the fringes, not on the outside, jumping in both feet, jumping in and working the steps and getting the sponsor and going to meetings and doing it all so that we can have the results that we long for in our hearts. We got to get right in the thick of it, guys. The wisdom in the rooms will challenge that self-destructive thinking that we have, and meetings help prevent relapse. Again and again, we have listened to the stories of people who relapse. And there's a scripture that I always think of. We must pay the most careful attention, therefore, to what we have heard. Say this with me, so that we do not drift away. So that we don't drift away. People drift, don't they? And we celebrate when they come back. Well, we celebrate that they lived long enough to try again. And when we ask them what happened, often the first words out of their mouth are, you guessed it, I stopped going to meetings. Doesn't that happen? We hear this all the time. I want people to stay in meetings, but I'll just be satisfied to sit in a meeting and let everyone else do the experimenting. I got to stay here. I got to stay here. Meetings are where we get encouragement, is where we find sponsors, where we hear stories, where we are introduced to the steps, where we can be a part of something bigger than we are that affects our families and our whole community, where we can be of service, where we can find our purpose. Guys, people search their entire lives for meaning, and we have been handed our meaning. It's to share this program and this way of life with others. More than that, more than just going to meetings, though, I want to give a good pitch for a home group, right? A good pitch for a home group. Sometimes, okay, I have a home group. Sometimes I can finish people's sentences in my home group. But they are where, my home group is where I'm known. And I know the people there. I know them intimately. Home group members call you if you aren't there. And it's important for us to be known. I have shared this, and there's a couple people at this table right over here that just heard this week, so I apologize for the repetition. But when I first came to Fort Myers, I came from Columbus, Ohio, and I thought that I was going to come to Columbus and I was going to leave my old life behind. I wasn't even going to think about it anymore. It was over, it was done, I was starting fresh. And I was sitting at the Yana Club in Fort Myers. The place was packed, and I was so lonely. I was so lonely. And it occurred to me that one of the reasons I was so lonely is because nobody knew me. And part of the reason was because I hadn't gone and made myself known to anyone. And I had a secret that I left Columbus, Ohio with. And I thought I would go to my grave with it, and I thought in my new life and my new world and my fresh start, nobody has to know my secret. And that about killed me. It about killed me. There is no kind of lonely than the lonely that you have when you're sitting surrounded by like-minded people and you're not sharing yourself and you're not known. It's important. So what happened in this cascade of tears, I shared my big secret, and it turned out 5 other people in the room had the exact same thing. You remember how I talked about that disease of loneliness and isolation, and how my thinking can get me in trouble? I almost got in trouble there. So I want to encourage you to have a home group, to have people in your life that know you and that you know. It's important for us. And being known takes away the ability to use the F word, not that F word. The other one, fine. You know that word? Not that fine, but this one. Feelings inside not expressed. Okay? Anybody relieved? I would get in so much trouble. Maybe the alcoholic addict can convince themselves, or even strangers, that they're fine. But at a meeting where you are known, you can walk in and somebody say, what's up? You're not acting like yourself. You look like you're about to throat punch somebody. What's going on with you? People don't know what they don't know. And regular attendance at a home group allows people to step into your life and to speak truth to your life and to love you through thick and thin and through everything. I do not know what I would do without my people. Do you know what I mean when I say that? Many are in this room. There was a guy, and I've shared this story too, I'm sorry. But I was in my home group, and this man had heard my comments over and over and over and over and over again. He was about up to here on me. And he looked, I say he looked like Yoda, but I think he looked more like a goblin than, and he one day knew me and loved me enough to speak a painful truth to me and to challenge me to begin to have a relationship with my higher power. Because I was about 2 years in, I knew everything there was to know about sobriety. I was an authority on the subject. I had no idea who God was, but I would fake it till I make it. And he called me out on it in love. And so that brings me to another great reason to keep coming to meetings. It's where many of us have found our relationship with God. I came here an agnostic, raised in a faith and couldn't wait to get out of it. And it was at a home group that this man who knew me well challenged me to open myself up to a relationship with God. And this higher power thing is a hard thing for some of us to get. And we look at the brokenness in our lives and in this world, and it can be difficult to think that there is a loving God. When our lives have blown up and it is all chaos and hurt and pain, it can be really, really hard to do anything else but go, why have you done this to me, right? Well, people in recovery will love us through all of that stuff and celebrate every baby step that we take along the way. It's hard when it's really, really broken in our lives to connect with God sometimes, but I think it's really, really hard for those folks who have abundance too. I mean, if somebody gets sober and has financial and professional and romantic success, why do they need a higher power? I mean, they got it all, right? Friends, if you hang out at meetings, you'll see your higher power at work in the lives of the people around you. And if you're open to the experience, you'll discover ways to connect, and they will teach you, help you learn how to pray. I didn't know how to pray. I didn't know how to do any of that stuff. And I needed encouragement from people to do that. You'll find out that you're not alone with your doubts. If you have doubt, of course, it's okay to have doubts here. You'll learn how to open yourself up to the possibilities of there being a creator and a provider and a refuge, somebody who loves you dearly and deeply, somebody who protected you while you were out there and brought you to this place. Your eyes will begin to open to that, and one day you'll have your first of many, many spiritual awakenings, and then you'll realize that he'd been there all along, carrying you through some of the roughest, most horrible parts of your life. And then there's another reason to keep coming to meetings. Meetings are a place we carry the message. Now, could you imagine coming to a meeting and the doors shut and the lights are off? Do you remember what it took to get you here? Do you remember the pain and the fear and the wondering if this is going to work for you, and talking yourself out of it a million times, maybe going around the corner 2 or 3 times? Let's just say that happened and you drove up and the door was closed and the lights were off. Do you think you would find another meeting? No. What we do here by being here is life-saving to other people. I remember when I got here, I was beat down, full of shame, lonely, and full of rage. And a lot of people come here frightened and depressed and desperate and hopeless and confused. And it did take a lot to get here, but we got here, thank God. I remember thinking, when I heard all the laughter, I expected I was going to come in to recovery and everybody was going to be depressed, because they're not drinking anymore. And I heard people laughing at the most unbelievable things. You know what I'm talking about, right? The stories we tell. I have never laughed so hard as I have in meetings. Maybe that was your experience when you came here. Whatever got you here, whatever fear or pain or shame or trouble. And maybe when you walked in that door, somebody greeted you. And even though you weren't sure this was a place for you or if this thing was even going to work, you felt for a moment maybe you could exhale. Oh man, maybe there's something to this recovery thing. And now, because people were there at your first meeting and they greeted you and they made you feel welcome, you get to do the same for new people. Man, I am always on the lookout for new people. We might save a life by welcoming someone. Do you know that? I know my life was saved. My life was saved because I hadn't been welcome anywhere in a really, really long time. I'd been kicked out of a lot of places, but I hadn't been welcomed. And when they asked me to come back, I'm like, who, me? You would, seriously? I mean, I was a brawler. Oh, my goodness. They actually wanted me to come back. Give a newcomer the chance you got. It's only at meetings that the alcoholic, addict, codependent person can consistently hear, experience strength and hope, and share tools, and hear that they're not alone, and they're not the only one to ever deal with a given situation, and that getting loaded is never a solution. There's no situation so good that it will not be destroyed by getting loaded, and there's no situation so bad that it won't be annihilated, made so much worse by getting loaded. Meetings are the place where joy is multiplied and pain is divided, where whatever someone's going through, good or bad, somebody else has navigated through it and can help. Meetings are where a higher power can be found. How many of you found a higher power here? Look around, man. There's power here. There's power in meetings. Meetings are where alcoholics and addicts and codependents are right-sized, there is nobody here better than anyone else. There's nobody here with any more sobriety than anybody else. We're sober today, this moment, and this moment is the one that counts. There's no big shots. Bill, you remember that when he said, no big shots, no little shots. One shot, we're all shot. Right? I want to tell you a couple more things about meetings. Meetings are the place where your experience is valued. Your story is celebrated. Your story can be the key that unlocks the door for somebody else's recovery. Your story is valuable, and friends, we used to be covered with shame because of our stories, and now our stories are miraculous and help other people get clean and sober and free. Isn't that amazing? Your story is so valuable here. Your wisdom is treasured. Your experience is what helps us move from one trouble and out of it. Somebody is going through a I've been through that. Let me show you how I got through that. Somebody's going through grief. Oh, let's meet at a couple meetings. We'll have some coffee. Let me walk you through that. Where do you find that, you guys? Where do you find that? You find that right here. No matter what we're going through in our lives, somebody has gone through it, and somebody will help. We're never alone. This is a place where aging is respected. It's a beautiful thing. It's where relapse is prevented and where the miracle of service is both practiced and received. And this is a place where we live out these words. Would you read it with me? And let us consider how to stir up one another to love and good works, not neglecting to meet together, as in the habit of some, but encouraging one another, and all the more as you see the day drawing near. I love that. We stir one another up. We stir one another up to stay sober another day. We stir one another up to stay out of business we don't have any business in. We stir one another up to keep moving forward, to keep working the steps, to keep talking to our sponsors, to keep working the program, to keep doing the next right thing. Bottom line is, you need meetings, and meetings need you. You need meetings, and meetings need you. So let's say it again. Meetings. Attend them. Thank you very much.